Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar on Govern the Article Master for Retail and Fashion Management Solutions from SAP and Utopia. My name is Lisa Teresi, and I'm a marketing specialist here at Utopia. I'll be moderating today's session. So if you have any questions during the session for our presenter, just please type this in the questions box. And then if you have any other comments about maybe the audio went down or you're having trouble with GoToWebinar, if you could type those in the chat, I'll be able to help you out. Our presenter today is Martin Prince, who is our Director of Retail Solutions here at Utopia, and he will give the presentation today. Thanks, Martin, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and good morning, everybody, on this beautiful Thursday morning. We're going to talk about retail for fashion management for the AFS solution. We have our solution that was introduced, our overall version of master data governance for retail was introduced in April last year, 2016. And we had very strong interest in the product. So the solution was extended to the FMS module, which is, of course, a natural extension from the IS Retail focus. So when we did that, what we've done is that we are focusing on the master data governance, and I'll talk a little bit about that, about the overall how that fits in with MDG, the standard MDG. So the key here is that we have a master data, a modern platform using the state-of-the-art master data platform by using the SAP master data governance tool. So I want to emphasize here that we have not really built a new tool. We have built a new version or new application onto that tool. So all the underlying structure of SAP's master data governance is still in place. What we have developed in this solution is that we are supporting the article master, we are supporting the features that are required in the FMS solution. So the key element when we're talking master data governance, of course, the governance. Making sure that you have complete transparency in your document, you have complete transparency of who did exactly what in your system, and you make sure that the right people are enhancing and or approving the data as you move forward, right? That does not mean that it's necessarily always the same people that needs to approve everything. It's not one size fits all. You can, for example, have if you're talking men's tops or women's bottoms, for example, you could have different people doing different validations, right? It's about consistency, making sure that only people with the right authorizations, are actually making the data entries into the system or doing the validations. And it's about eliminating errors in your downstream system. As you know, the further down in your supply chain or your value chain that you discover an error, the more expensive it is to fix. So if you can catch something very early in the process in your MDG, you're much better off. And even in your MDG RFM solution, if you can catch it early in the process, even there you have a lower cost of correcting data. So it's all about that when data leaves MDG RFM, the data are consistent. They are consistent, and you know that you have confidence that you have one version of the truth when it comes to your article master when it leaves MDG. So no matter if you look in your FMS system, if you look in your warehouse management system, if you look in your catalog system, the data that comes from MDG should be the same across all your systems. And it's about consolidating your data creation. You have one central place where you maintain your master data. So this also means there's no more creating articles in the underlying FMS systems. There's no changing data in your underlying FMS system. All this happens in the master data governance. Now, we have several clients or prospects that are actually asking us, well, we're not interested, or it's going to take longer, right? Because we're not interested because it's going to take longer, and it is not really going to take longer. I think what they have in mind is they have a cumbersome process where, like I said earlier, where everything fits the same model, and that is not the case. You customize your workflow to your business process. And it's about integration, right? Integration, that we have a native integration to the SAP solutions, and we reuse the data model and the business logic that comes with that, with those systems. And on top of that, you can build using BRF Plus. You can use your own business rules. An example that I often use is, for example, if you're, for example, in the grocery business, it's very easy to explain, right? And I get, in the fresh category, I get, let's say, lettuce, right? I can then have a business validation that says that if this is a fresh item, my temperature control needs to be within a certain interval in the DC, and perhaps in a slightly different interval in the store. But the key here is that the system is actually validating that it's a fresh item, and the temperature control that you put in for your DC has got to fit the fresh item allowed, intervals. We also have the flexibility to extend the data model. Should you have a few C fields, you can maintain those in your underlying FMS system, and they will also be available in your your RFM for FMS solution on MDG. And of course, the most important thing is your data quality. This is really why we're here, right? The data quality will be higher when you make sure that the appropriate people do their due diligence, when you make sure that all your business rules have been met. I have a computer that is acting up. 1 second. Here we go. The key element for this is get your data clean and stay clean. So I just want to put things in a slightly bigger picture here. So get clean. Utopia has been doing data cleaning for many years, right? In a key tool that we use in our Get Clean data is the SAP data services to clean the data, to make sure you don't have duplicate data, to standardize data. When you get clean data, it's about getting them to stay clean, because this is like if any of you have kids, right? You can click your key, you can clean your kid's room, and the real challenge is really to get it stay clean. Otherwise, you come back in 2 weeks and you start all over again, right? So for that, I'm not sure master data governance will help you with your kid's room, but it does help you in your business processes and your various businesses, right? So as we talked about, it's about collaboration and eliminating silos. It's about governance to the company standard. It's about transparency and having your governance in place, and having a simple and efficient process. It's very easy to build something that, or you could build something that is very complex and very time-consuming, but that is not really the point, and I think we missed the mark on that. So master data governance, SAP MDG, RFM, takes a key element in here. Now, in your underlying system, you can also have a system called the SAP Information Steward. And what that is doing, it is visualizing your data. And it has a very nice feedback into your MDG RFM solution, where if you discover, for example, some problems, let's say, with the description that were incorrect, you can actually feed from Information Steward straight into Master Data Governance and create a change request that will trigger the process of getting that data changed. So what this solution here, what this slide is depicting, is that you have heterogeneous articles, sources coming from the left. You may have a GS1, you may have a PLM system, you may have a vendor link, you may have manual upload, right? And when you streamline that going through the SAP MDG tool, MDG RFM tool, you get like a single version of the truth. Everything goes good through the governance process and fits your company standards. And you can make sure that all the systems to the right, no matter if it is on-premise systems, in cloud, FMS, PKMS, or your warehouse or your merchandising systems, whatever they are, they follow the same. They get the same quality of data from MDG RFM. So this one here, we already talked about that a little bit. Part of its data quality is not only about the quality itself, it's also making sure that your data are actually processed in an efficient manner. And many clients have actually are still using the transactions MM41 for those who are deep in the retail, but essentially they create article 1 at the time, they change article 1 at the time. So it's about what this product also introduces. It introduces some features that standard out of the box allows you to process multiple multiple items at the same time. It's also about governance and efficiency. You define your workflows, you have your business rules in place, and those governance processes and business rules actually make sure that you have a very efficient process. It's not based on email and Excel spreadsheets. One of our clients that we speak to say we spent about 10% of our IT resources and time on correcting analytics and forecasting, because it's a data entry job. Sorry, it's an entry job in the department to enter your master data. Excuse me. And that means that data gets entered incorrectly. We get purchase orders generated, and now we need to go back and correct our analytics because they're off. And this is something that resides within the IT department. So in the fact that if you eliminate that your master data is off, incorrect, or significantly reduces that, that means that you also reduces the IT department's amount of help that they need to do to get things corrected retroactively. Right? We get supply chain interruptions. You send data, incorrect data from your. You get the data from your PLM system. It goes into your ECC system, and there's no really governance between those two systems. There's no golden handshake, right? You cut POs, that goes off to your vendors, and after a period of time, they will contact you and say, wait a minute, are you really sure that this is the right data? You look in your system and say, no, it is not, and you have your POs that you need to correct and all that interruption that you have in place. And we have the omni-channel base. So this is the basis of creating the Article 360-degree view, as we call it, where you make sure that it is you have correct data on your FMS system, you have correct data on your PKMS system, and also your content management system, right? So we pass that data through that funnel of data quality and data streaming, and you build on top of that when you get to your omni-channel. The IT cost, of course, when you get on a standard platform like you may have with your FMS system or your SAP merchandising system, is that you are on an upgrade path. You know you adhere to the best practices. Jürgen Sturm from Siemens said that actually quite well when it came to the relevance of data harmonization, and he said you don't really need to HANA. If you don't have your data under control, you don't really need HANA either. You're just going to calculate wrong data. And I think from a HANA point of view, that is very true. I think it is also true even if you're not on a HANA platform. But he actually kept that. He actually captured that very well. This slide here actually focuses on your transition into HANA, right? You have your different systems on the left. You have your MDG suite and you have your HANA suite. Now, many of you know you may be looking into an FMS implementation. You may look into an FMS implementation, or you may have an FMS implementation already. Those of you that have been through that process knows that data cleansing and getting your data governed and controlling that process in a project is often the longest pole in the tent. So if you're considering transition to HANA. There's actually a very good business case of doing that today, because what we've seen is that we have about a 20 to 25% cost reduction in the process of implementing HANA from an implementation point of view. And there's another aspect of that is, as you know very well, when you do an implementation, you will actually find that your key resources are stretched very thin, right? So by moving your data governance, actually doing that before, number one, as I mentioned, you have a reduction in your overall implementation cost. Number two, your key resources are not stretched as thin because we have actually moved some of our work up front. And the second thing is that when you go into your S4HANA environment, you know your data will actually be clean. Since the RFM solution sits on top of FMS or SAP merchandising, because it could be both, we get a lot of usability out of that immediately. We reuse the data model. We use exactly the same logic that we have. If you key an incorrect merchandise category as an example, or a wrong sales organization or sales area, as we call it in SAP, you will get an error. So all the validations, the field validations that you have in place in the underlying ECC system will actually also be applicable for the RFM system. And also we enable the governance, the compliance, and the transparency. And this is which actually allows you for a very mature audit trail, or very secure audit trail. Everything that you change in the system is being logged. And you get a very clear log of what was changed, by whom, and by when. And some people say, well, we also have that in ECC, and that's true, but you, for example, do not have that in a create mode. You cannot really see who actually created what in a create mode. Here, everything is being recorded. You get your consistent definitions, you get authorizations, also from the underlying ECC system. And you eliminate your manual processes, and we're going to talk about that later. And you have the integration, as we talked earlier, with data services and SAP Information Steward and SAP HANA. And SAP HANA is very useful for your search functionality with the SAP HANA search capabilities. A very standard flow that we typically use, I like this slide because it will give a very good overview of the data or the process in MDG, right? It starts with maintenance, and the maintenance can be, for example, as simple as creating a change request yourself. A change request is really the tool. We're going to see that later. A tool is essentially the proxy article master. It looks like an article master, but it sits in a change request in the system, so it does not pollute your underlying system. So you can, in the maintain, you can manually create a change request like a user. You can upload via Excel that I'm going to show in a little bit. You can have data imported from a data pool. You could have data coming in from a PLM system, for example, like many of you perhaps will have. That when data received gets to a certain maturity level, they drop into MDG for governance. After the data have been entered, they are validated. Like I said, we will make sure that the merchandise categories are correct, making sure that the seasons that are entered are actually being validated. And then on top of that, you can also have your business rules, like the temperature example I gave before. Or for example, if you have a certain category of men's tops, then there are certain checks that you want to put in place that are automatically driven. You can also have a call to external services for getting data validated, for example. And all that is happening, then your approval process starts. This is where your enrichment, you may add manually additional data. You may make sure that the logistics team or the warehouse team is actually validating the data. The sourcing team is actually validating the data. And when that last step, when that last approval has happened in the string of approval, that's when the article is being dropped to your FMS systems, your merchandising system, or any of your third-party process systems that we talked about earlier will receive the data. The data model is very much like it is in IS Retail. We have all the views. And I see right here that we're missing actually a few of the FMS views that you have, but we do have the FMS views. We do have the DC1, the DC2s, and so forth, all the functionality. And we sit on that on top of the box with SAP validation, with the SAP validations coming out of ECC, as we talked about earlier. You have your data replication that you know from SAP. We have the governance and the collaboration and the data quality, which is the key element with your workflow, making sure that people who are supposed to review the data actually also see the data. So remember what I talked about earlier in this scenario here, what I talked about earlier about change request, right? So the system works as a staging area. The entire master data governance for retail and fashion management for FMS is actually sitting in a staging area. When you log on, when you key in your data, it really looks like an article master, right? You have exactly the same fields, but the data are technically held in a change request. And the change request is going back and forth as you approve and going back if you reject. You enrich the data in the change request. And as you get to the final approval, it will then drop and the article will be created and the change request will be closed, right? So out of the box, SAP standard MDG comes with the material master, the customer supply, a chart of accounts, and so forth, right? Now, material does not work very well in a retail environment. So that's why we have developed the RFM for FMS. Utopia has also developed the EAM for enterprise asset management for heavy industries, for asset-heavy industries, but that's for another session with somebody else. Now, when you do your governance, you can have your workflow as a linear process. Like you have, for example, if I just take the views, you have, for example, the general data, you have procurement then afterwards, and then you have logistics or selling, and you have the work, you have the, for example, the warehouse folks doing the last approval, or the category manager doing the last approval, right? When you do a linear process, it tends to take a long time. So what you can also do is you can also run them in parallel. So if you have your general data, you could even have your sales folks, you can have procurement folks, you can have your distribution, the warehouse folks, actually run all this in parallel. And when all those have been approved, it will then go to the next step, or if that is the last step, it will then drop, as I mentioned, to the ECC. Now, all these things are controlled by roles and responsibilities. So you make sure that, for example, if you have different distribution chains, if you have different sales areas, now I can only operate in the predefined sales areas. I can, for example, not, if I'm procurement, I cannot maintain data that comes to the warehouse, etc., etc. All those things will be set up according to your business needs. And of course, all this can be tailored to your customer's needs. So that's not the same workflow. It's not one size fits all. It even have different workflows, have different authorizations that actually meet your business requirements. And then the data quality. So even as I mentioned earlier, is that the earlier that you actually discover a quality issue, the better that it is. And even in MDG RFM process, you want to discover it as early as possible. So one of the things that we do is that we do validation very early on. Like, do we already have a duplicate? There's no reason to go all the way to the end. If the system can tell you up front that we have a duplicate. We also get all the business validations done up front and all the ECC validations up front. So you see immediately that, oh, there's a list of items missing. There's a list of my items missing, and there's some inconsistency in the data, and you go and fix those immediately. And we talked about the data replication earlier, and the data replication and how that is actually working. We're using the standard data replication techniques of SAP. So in this slide here, I actually talk about the different workflows, right? So this is an example of a workflow. So when I walk out to a client and do a demo, this is typically my top workflow, right? And that could be a workflow in case it is manually created by me or Alice on the slide here, if it is uploaded by a smaller vendor from a portal, or if it is uploaded by an Excel spreadsheet, as we're going to see in a little bit. Then I want to have enrichment from Bob, and I want to have the final approval from Charlie, the data manager. I could actually have multiple Bobs sitting in parallel and maintaining, for example, Bob procurement is responsible for the procurement data and Bob warehouse for the DC data, right? If I get my data from a data pool, from a trusted vendor, or perhaps even if you get your data from a PLM system, right? You may not necessarily have to go through the same steps and reviews. Or if you, for example, it could also be in your case, for example, that you have a PLM system and all the basic merchandise, the merchandise you're actually selling, you want to go through a rigorous process. Now you may buy certain accessories, like belts that you may not be doing or things like that, and they don't go through the same strict review because they already come pre-packed from the vendor. So enough of me talking, at least 2 slides. Let's take a look at the system with a quick demo. What we have, Utopia has developed some accelerators in the system, and the element here is that we want to get away from manually creation one by one in the system. So we have developed a tool for uploading. So the tool for uploading is Excel based. So many companies are really using Excel in their planning, in the business engagement. So that's a natural tool to use for uploading data. So it consists of 2 tabs, a data tab and a header tab. And in the data tab, I have all my data maintained here, and I can actually, as you see here, you can actually hide the columns that you don't want the business to see. So you can have the business or your vendors look straight into this template, or you can use the template that you already have, and then simply just load it into this by copying the data from one to another. And you can do that by having macros, or as an example. Now you may notice here that I have the same row twice, and in this case here it's because that I have different 2 different descriptions or 2 different languages maintained. I could also be, for example, if I had like 3 different distribution chains, I would then just have 3 different distribution sales organizations as an example, and now instead of 2 I would have 3, and the system would create the different sales views in the background as we create the article. The header data has a summarization of data, and then it will generate the change request numbers, and you will see that in a little bit how that is working. So let me log on to the system and give you a demo of that. Now I'm sitting here on a VPN, not being on the network, so it is not the fastest thing. And I have talked to our development department, and they say when we run it within our company network, it runs way faster than what you experience here. So the first thing I do is I log on to our SAP server, and then I trigger my change requests. And it is actually responding. So what you're going to see here over to the right is that you're going to see the change request numbers being generated. Say, for example, my merchandise category was incorrect. It would show in bright red, and it would tell you that the merchandise category so-and-so does not exist, please correct. So it's straightforward to do that. Now, would I then correct my merchandise category and run this again, the same file with my corrected merchandise category in this field, for example? The system would say, when I run the second time, change request already exists, change request already exists, and they would then give me a change request number. So it's very easy. 500 articles you want to load, scroll up and down, take a look, say, oh, okay, there was 2 or 3 that were missing. You can take those 2 out, or you can simply load the entire file again. And in case of 500, I would have 498 that would fail on the second part, and the last 2 would be created. So it's a very easy to use tool. I'll make sure that I still have connection, everything is running. The screen that you see here is actually the logon screen, and it comes standard with a pie. And you can see here, in this case, my change requests, or you can see change requests from my participation. So this is actually like when you get in the morning and you log on this, and you log on the system, and you actually take a look at the system and say, oh, I have one. As of now, I have 32 that I need to process. Right? There's 4 drafts. There's no error and no rejected. So it actually looks pretty good, but 32 is what I need to work on. So when I can process those one by one, or I can simply go into our mass change cockpit. And what that looks like is, it looks like at the header level, at the top level, you actually have a list of all the change requests you're working on. So in my case here, I am filtering by the change requests that are relevant to me. So what I'm doing is I'm simply selecting the change requests I have to work on. And it is as simple as you can use Microsoft, select the first one, select the last one, select everything, deselect a few if you decide to do so. So based on these 3 change requests that I want to process, you see here I have configured my screen. I have all my basic data listed in this screen here, and I can drag and drop my and move my columns around as I please. Now, when I move them into this here, actually, when I just drag and drop in my screen, the system automatically remembers the layout of my screen, and next time I get in, I get the same. So I have configured this screen because I want to make sure that my article types are correct, merchandise categories are correct, and also my pricing profiles are correct. So I have moved those into the fields that I need to take a look. But I could also simply scroll right and make sure that the other data that I want to take a look at are correct. So I review my data here from a basic data point of view, and then I also, these are all my basic data. I get my article descriptions below, and as you see, remember that we have 2 rows for each article, and that is because I had an English and a French language for each of the items. So since my French is not so good, I just kept them. The descriptions in English. Sorry for that if there's any French audience. But the key here is that you have your article description. And by the way, you can actually, let's say, for example, that my merchandise category is incorrect. I can actually go in, click Edit, modify the field, and save it. So I can modify fields here if they're missing, right? I get my listing data, I get my unit of measure, basic unit of measure, you get your additional G10s, etc., tax information, sales purchase information, and so forth. All the data are available in here, and you can customize the screens and the layout. So instead of going in review the data like one article at a time, we've created this cockpit that actually allows you to process multiple articles in one step after you review them. So for those 3 articles, I'm actually going to click Approve now. And the system will then, in the background, once released, go ahead and validate the processes and click the approval, and it will actually automatically go to the next step in the approval process. So just like right now, I looked at an inbox of the change requests that I have to work on. Now, in case of Charlie, he would then get actually an inbox as his, right? So this is, so since I have created everything in my user ID, I have all the rows in my user ID, it automatically jumps to the next step. But that would actually be if I would log out and log in again, this is the scenario I would see. So here, when you do the last step in the workflow, it's actually said activate. So the person who does that knows when he or she clicks on the bottom here, activate. And by the way, they get to see exactly the same screen that we saw before. Of course, that individual could customize the screen to his or her information needs. So when I now click on activate, the articles will be actually created in the underlying ECC system, and they will be ready to use. So this was a quick review or very quick walkthrough of some of the enhancements that we have done to the to the solution for MDG RFM. We have there's a lot of functionality within the system, and it's listed out here in the content list. So before I wrap up, let me just spend a couple minutes on some of the benefits with this. You get there are many ways of get to a good data quality, and it can be actually released into ECC and work on there multiple times, and you eventually at one point will get to a good quality, or you will simply make sure that your quality is up there in the beginning, and you know when it hits the ECC, when it hits the recipient systems, you know the quality is there, you know you have one version of the truth. So by designing your workflows in an efficient manner, you know that when it hits the recipient systems, it will actually be the correct data that they receive. You can also share your product information. So many companies, especially when we talk about the DC or the logistics information, they may be sitting in a facility that is off the main office. You can also have, for example, your vendors upload certain items, accessories that may not be core to your product line, and they can actually do the first level of validation. That is very common in the consumer packaging industries. And you also implement the base for the omnichannel experience, right, where you push your data on to either your web store or to a content management system. And you improve your decision making. And you do that by making sure that actually people who need to see this, they will see it. And you are now on a path with a standard product, right? With a standard SAP product, and you know, on an upgrade path with all the new functionality that comes with that. So thank you very much for your time. If you want to know more, feel free to reach out to either to your SAP account executive, because one thing that is very important on this is we are actually on the SAP price list. We're selling through SAP. It's SAP that's actually selling the product. So this product is not an Utopia product. It is actually an SAP product. Yes, we have developed it, and we may do a workshop like this, and we may also do a workshop with you. But it is essentially an SAP product. Should there be any problems with the product afterwards, it would go through exactly the same channels as it does for your existing FMS system. So thank you very much for your time. Like if you want to know more, reach out to your SAP account executive or me or anybody at Utopia.